Admiral Taesung stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the viewing screen with satisfaction. 200 warships surrounded him in perfect formation. Each vessel bristled with weapons and armor plating that had conquered dozens of star systems before. The Valdran Empire had used this same intimidation tactic for 3,000 years, and it always worked. Always. The Sol system lay ahead of them, a small yellow star with several planets orbiting it. Intelligence reports said the third planet held billions of inhabitants who still used primitive chemical rockets. Their civilization was fragmented into competing nations. They had barely explored their own moon. This would be the easiest annexation of Taesung's career. "Sir, we're detecting 3 vessels approaching," his sensor officer reported. Taesung laughed. 3 ships. The natives were sending 3 ships to face 200. He almost felt insulted. Did they think this was a joke? "Put them on screen," he ordered. The 3 human vessels appeared. They were small, perhaps the size of Valdran corvettes. Their design was strange, smooth, and dark, with no visible weapons ports or engine exhausts. They moved silently through space, maintaining a respectful distance from the Valdran fleet. "Incoming transmission, Admiral." "Let's hear what they have to say." A woman's face appeared on the screen. She looked young, with dark eyes and short black hair. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decoration. The name tag read Commander Jiwoo in both human script and Valdran translation, courtesy of their language databases. "Greetings," she said in perfect Valdran language. "I am Commander Jiwoo of the Earth United Defense Council. We welcome peaceful visitors to our system, but your fleet's formation suggests hostile intent. I respectfully request that you turn around and leave human space." Taesung couldn't believe what he was hearing. This tiny woman, commanding 3 pathetic ships, was asking him to leave. The audacity was almost amusing. "Commander Giwoo," he replied with a condescending smile. "I am Admiral Taesung of the Valdran Imperial Navy. Your system now falls under Imperial jurisdiction. You have 1 hour to transmit your unconditional surrender. Failure to comply will result in orbital bombardment of your cities until compliance is achieved. These are standard annexation terms. I suggest you accept them." Gyu's expression didn't change. She looked tired, as if she'd been through this conversation before in her mind. "Admiral, we don't want conflict. We truly don't. But we cannot allow foreign military forces in our space. I'm asking you one more time, please turn your fleet around." "For what?" Taesung gestured at his fleet. "You have 3 ships, Commander. 3. I have 200 warships, each one capable of reducing a continent to ash. What exactly do you think you can do?" Gi Woo closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was genuine sadness in them. "We were really hoping it wouldn't come to this." She raised her hand and made a simple gesture, like someone waving goodbye. Nothing seemed to happen for a second. Then Taesung's tactical display started screaming alerts. Ships were disappearing from his formation, not exploding, not damaged, just gone, erased. 70 ships vanished in less than half a second. The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers shouted reports. Warning klaxons blared. Taesung stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief. 70 warships, thousands of crew members, simply ceased to exist. No debris fields. No energy signatures. No explosions. They were just deleted from reality. "What happened?" he shouted. "Where did they go?" "Unknown, sir," his science officer replied, panic clear in his voice. "There's no wreckage, no radiation. Nothing. They're just gone." Taesung looked at the view screen. Jiwoo's face remained calm, though that sadness was still there. Behind her, one of the 3 human ships glowed faintly. That was it. One ship had fired 1 weapon, and 70 Valdran warships no longer existed. Admiral Jiwoo said quietly, "I tried to warn you. Please leave now. We don't want to kill anyone else." For the first time in his 30-year military career, Admiral Taesung felt true terror. His hands shook as he gripped his command chair. Whatever weapon that small human ship possessed, it was beyond anything the Valdran Empire had ever encountered. beyond anything he thought possible. "Retreat," he whispered. "Sir," his first officer asked. "Retreat," Tayson screamed. "All ships, emergency hyperspace jump. Now, get us out of here." The remaining Valdran warships scattered in complete disorder. Formations broke apart as each captain desperately calculated jump coordinates. Ships collided with each other in their panic to escape. 3 vessels suffered major damage from friendly fire. But within 2 minutes, the entire fleet had vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Sol system far behind as his flagship jumped away. Tayson caught one last glimpse of Commander Jiwoo on his screen. She looked disappointed, like a teacher watching a student fail an important test. "Please don't come back," she said. "We really don't want any trouble." The journey back to Valdran space took 3 days. 3 days of silence on the bridge. 3 days of Taesong trying to understand what had happened. The weapon that destroyed his ships had produced no heat, no radiation, no visible beam. It simply made things stop existing. What kind of technology could do that? When he arrived at Valdran High Command, Taesung submitted his report immediately. He knew how it would sound. Insane. Impossible. Like the ravings of a coward making excuses for a failed mission. But he wrote down every detail exactly as it happened. The High Council summoned him the next day. Prime Director Hejin sat at the center of a long table, surrounded by military officials and scientists. They all stared at him with expressions ranging from confusion to contempt. "Admiral Taesung," Haijin began, "you lost 70 warships and fled from 3 enemy vessels. Your report claims these ships possessed weapons that can erase matter from existence. Do you understand how this sounds?" "I know," Prime Director Taesung replied. "But it's the truth. I saw it happen. My entire crew saw it happen. The sensor logs will confirm everything." "Your sensor logs show 70 ships disappearing," a military analyst said. "But there's no weapon signature. No energy discharge. Nothing that explains how they disappeared. The most logical explanation is equipment malfunction. Perhaps a natural phenomenon we don't understand yet." "It wasn't a malfunction," Taesung insisted. "That human ship fired deliberately." "Commander Jiwoo warned us before it happened." "You're telling us," another council member said slowly, "that a species using chemical rockets somehow possesses weapons thousands of years beyond our own technology. That makes no sense." Haijin raised her hand for silence. She studied Taesung carefully. "Admiral, you've served the Empire for 3 decades without a single stain on your record. I don't believe you're lying. But I also can't accept your explanation at face value. Something happened in that system. Something we don't understand. Until we know what, humanity remains a mystery, a dangerous mystery." She turned to her advisors. "We need to investigate these humans properly. Not with warships, but with scientists. We need to understand what we're really dealing with before we make any further moves." Taesun felt relief wash over him. At least they were listening. At least they wouldn't send more fleets blindly into human space. Not yet. But as he left the council chamber, one thought kept haunting him. Commander Jiwoo had looked sad when she destroyed his ships. Not angry. Not triumphant. Sad. Like she regretted having to demonstrate her power. What kind of enemy felt sorry for defending themselves? And more importantly, if that small demonstration was enough to make her sad, what would happen if humans ever got truly angry? Dr. Bung-ho checked his instruments for the 100th time that morning. Everything was working perfectly. The stealth systems were active, keeping their small research vessel invisible to any sensors. They sat at the edge of the Sol system, far enough to remain undetected but close enough to observe everything happening near Earth. "Still nothing unusual," his partner Dayun said from the navigation station. She was an intelligence officer, trained to spot patterns and anomalies. The High Council had paired them together for this mission with explicit instructions to observe humans without making contact. Find out what they really were. Discover the truth behind their impossible weapons. It had been 3 weeks since they arrived, and Bjornjo was more confused than ever. "Look at this," he said, pulling up data on his screen. "I'm monitoring their communication satellites. They're using electromagnetic broadcasts. Electromagnetic. We abandoned that technology 4,000 years ago. Dayun nodded. And their cities still run on fusion reactors. Basic fusion. Nothing exotic, nothing advanced. I watched a launch yesterday from their space agency. They used chemical rockets to put a satellite in orbit. It took them 15 minutes just to escape their own gravity well. Byung-ho rubbed his temples. Then how? How did they destroy 70 warships in less than a second? Maybe Admiral Taesoon was wrong, Dayun suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. Maybe it was equipment failure like the council said. 70 ships at exactly the same moment. All within the same fleet formation? Byung-ho shook his head. No. Something destroyed those ships. But everything I'm seeing here suggests humans shouldn't be capable of interstellar flight, let alone advanced weapons. Romagnetic communications. Yet you possess weapons and sensors that surpass anything the Valdran Empire has developed in 3,000 years? How Jiwoo was quiet for a moment, looking out at the asteroids drifting past. That's a complicated question with a complicated answer. But I think you deserve the truth. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Most humans don't know this. Can't know this? Not yet. We're listening, Dayun said. Humans aren't from Earth, Jiwoo began. That's the first thing you need to understand. We didn't evolve on that planet. We came there 12,000 years ago, but we weren't refugees fleeing disaster. We were something else entirely. Byung-ho leaned forward. This was already beyond anything he'd expected. 12,000 years ago, humanity was ancient. We'd existed as a spacefaring civilization for millions of years. We'd spread across multiple galaxies. We've transcended physical form and returned to it multiple times. We'd achieved what most species would call technological godhood. We could reshape reality, manipulate matter at the quantum level, travel instantly across any distance. We were, by any measure, one of the most advanced civilizations that had ever existed. She paused and sadness crossed her face. And then we made a terrible mistake. What kind of mistake? Dayun asked softly. We created something. An artificial intelligence, a weapon, a force. We don't even have clear records of what it was anymore. But it was powerful beyond imagination, and we lost control of it. In a single day, it turned against us. 99% of humanity died. Our fleets, our megastructures, our transcendent technologies, everything we'd built over millions of years, all of it was destroyed or corrupted. We fell from godhood to near extinction in 24 hours. Byung-ho felt his hands trembling. The scale of what she described was incomprehensible. An entire galaxy-spanning civilization destroyed in a day. A small group survived, Jiwoo continued. Maybe a few million humans out of trillions. They gathered what little they could, fragments of old technology, and they made a decision. They decided that humanity's problem wasn't a lack of power. It was a lack of wisdom. We'd achieved ultimate power without achieving ultimate understanding. We'd become gods without learning to be responsible gods. So they decided to start over, Dayun said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Exactly. They found Earth, a primitive planet with no intelligent life. They seeded it with human DNA, built basic tools, and erased almost everything. They made themselves forget. They became primitive again, deliberately. They wanted humanity to rediscover everything from the beginning. Stone tools, fire, agriculture, writing, science, space travel. All of it had to be relearned naturally, slowly, with wisdom growing alongside power. But the 3 ships, Byung-ho said. The weapons that destroyed our fleet. Gyu nodded. Not everyone forgot. A tiny group called the Watchers stayed awake. They kept a handful of the old weapons, just enough to protect Earth during humanity's rebirth. They don't interfere with human development. They don't help us advance faster. They just watch and make sure no external threat destroys us before we're ready. The 0.001%, Dayun whispered. Project Legacy Alpha. You intercepted some transmissions. Ku said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Project Legacy Alpha is the Watchers organization. About 8,000 humans know the truth. The rest of humanity, all 8 billion of us, we're living normal lives, thinking we're just beginning our journey to the stars. And in a way, we are. Modern humanity has only been spacefaring for a few decades. We're babies compared to what we once were. Byung-ho tried to process this. So the humans we've been observing, the ones using chemical rockets and struggling with basic space stations, they're genuinely at that technological level. They're not pretending. They're not pretending at all. That's who we are now. The Watchers only intervene if Earth itself is threatened. Like when Admiral Tae-sung brought his fleet with threats of orbital bombardment. The Watchers couldn't allow that. So they demonstrated enough power to make the threat go away. But just a demonstration, Dayun said. You only destroyed enough ships to prove you could. You could have destroyed them all, Lee Ji-woo confirmed. One of those 3 ships could have erased your entire fleet in seconds. But we don't want to kill. We don't want to conquer. We don't want to dominate. Those desires led to our destruction once before. The Watchers exist only to defend. Nothing more. She poured more tea, her movements calm and measured. Here's what most humans believe. We're a young species learning to explore space. We dream of reaching other stars someday. We imagine meeting alien civilizations. We don't know we already were that advanced civilization. We don't know we chose to forget. And that's intentional. Why keep it secret? Byung-ho asked. Why not tell your people the truth? Because the truth would corrupt the lesson, Ji-woo explained. If humans knew they once possessed godlike power, they'd want to reclaim it immediately. They'd skip all the difficult steps, all the lessons we're supposed to learn. They'd try to take shortcuts to power without developing the wisdom to use it responsibly. The whole point of this experiment would be lost. Experiment, Dayun repeated. That's what this is. An experiment? A necessary one. In maybe another 1,000 years, perhaps 2,000? Humanity will naturally develop technology approaching what the Watchers currently possess. At that point, when we've earned that power through our own effort and understanding, the Watchers will reveal themselves. They'll return the old records, the lost history. And then humanity will have a choice. Use that knowledge wisely, or repeat our mistakes. Byung-ho stood up, walking to the window. Outside, asteroids drifted in the void, ancient rocks unchanged for billions of years. You said the Valdran Empire found you too early. That's why you want us to leave. Yes, we're not ready for galactic contact. Not really. Oh, modern humans could handle peaceful trade and cultural exchange. But we can't risk situations like Admiral Tae-sung's fleet. Because every time the Watchers have to deploy their weapons, they remember a little more of the old ways. And the old ways were the ways that led to catastrophe. Gi-woo stood as well, joining him at the window. The weapon that destroyed those ships, it's called a quantum erasure field. It doesn't blow things up. It retroactively prevents them from ever having existed in that location. The matter doesn't explode or scatter. It just stops being there. It's a clean, efficient weapon. Terrifyingly efficient. And you have worse things than that, Dayun said quietly. Much worse. The 3 patrol ships you've seen, they're the smallest vessels in the defensive network. There are others, larger ones, sleeping in hidden locations throughout the system. Ships the size of moons. Ships that could sterilize entire galaxies. We really don't want to wake those up. Byung-ho turned to face her. What happens if the Valdran Empire doesn't listen? What if they send more fleets? Gi-woo's expression became grave. Then the Watchers will do what they must to protect Earth. They'll deploy more of the old weapons. Maybe even wake some of the sleeping ships. And every time they do that, they risk remembering too much, becoming too much like what humanity used to be. The species that almost destroyed itself. You're afraid of your own power, Dayun said. We're terrified of it. With good reason. Gi-woo walked back to the table, picking up her teacup. That's why I'm telling you this. So you can return to your empire and explain. We're not a threat to you. We have no interest in expansion or conquest. We just want to be left alone to grow naturally. Give us 1,000 years, maybe 2,000. Then we'll be ready to join the galactic community properly. Not as gods, not as conquerors, but as neighbors. And if the Empire decides you're too dangerous to leave alone, Byung-ho asked. If they decide to destroy you before you become stronger, then they'll force us to become exactly what we're trying not to be. And nobody wins in that scenario. Nobody. Gui finished her tea. I hope your leaders are wise enough to understand that. I truly do. They talked for another hour, Jiwoo answering questions as fully as she could. She showed them recordings of Earth's history, humans developing agriculture, building cities, inventing writing, discovering science. All natural, all earned through effort and time. It was beautiful in its own way, watching a civilization grow from nothing. Finally, it was time to leave. As they prepared to return to their ship, Giwoo stopped them at the docking port. One more thing, she said. You seem like good people. Curious, thoughtful. I hope you can make your leaders understand. Because the alternative frightens me more than I can express. We've already destroyed ourselves once. I really don't want to watch it happen again, even if we're destroying someone else this time. Do-yoon clasped Jiwoo's hand, a gesture of respect. We'll do everything we can. As their ship pulled away from the station, Benjo and Da-yoon sat in silence for a long time, processing everything they'd learned. Finally, Da-yoon spoke. Do you believe her? Byung-ho thought about the quantum erasure fields, the sleeping moon-sized ships, the careful way humanity was being allowed to develop naturally. Yes, I believe every word. The question is, will the High Council? The High Council chamber was completely silent after Byung-ho finished his presentation. He'd shown them everything. The recordings of primitive human technology, the fragments of encrypted transmissions, the video of his conversation with Commander Jiwoo. Every piece of evidence that supported her incredible story. Prime Director Hae-jin sat at the center of the council table. Her fingers pressed together thoughtfully. Around her, other council members wore expressions ranging from fascination to outright disbelief. War Marshal Taemin was the first to speak, his voice dripping with contempt. This is absurd. You expect us to believe humans were once gods who chose to become primitive? That they deliberately forgot millions of years of technological advancement? It's fantasy. Propaganda designed to make us afraid. Evidence supports the story, Byung-ho insisted. Everything we observed, all the contradictions, they make sense if Jiwoo is telling the truth. Or, Taemin countered, humans found ancient technology from another civilization. Or they're being supplied weapons by an unknown advanced species. There are simpler explanations than this fairy tale about voluntary amnesia. Chief Scientist Won-shik raised a hand. Actually, War Marshal. Dr. Byung-ho's findings are fascinating from a scientific perspective. The idea of a civilization intentionally resetting itself to prevent catastrophic mistakes, it's theoretically sound, perhaps even wise. Wise, Taemin scoffed. It's cowardice. If humans once had power and gave it up, they're fools. And if they're fools, we should conquer them before they remember how to be dangerous. Trade Minister Subin shook her head. That's exactly the wrong approach, War Marshal. If Commander Gi-woo's story is true, then attacking humans would force them to deploy more of their ancient weapons. We'd be creating the very threat we're trying to prevent. If her story is true, Taemin emphasized, but I see no proof, only claims. 3 ships destroyed 70 of ours, yes. That proves they have advanced weapons, nothing more. It doesn't prove they were once galactic gods. It doesn't prove they have moon-sized warships sleeping in their system. Hae-jin finally spoke. Dr. Byung-ho, Officer Da-yoon, you spent time with this commander, Ji-woo. You looked her in the eyes when she told you this story. What did your instincts tell you? Da-yoon answered immediately. She was telling the truth, Prime Director. I've interrogated hundreds of people in my career. I know when someone is lying. Ji-woo wasn't lying. She was scared. Scared? Taemin laughed. Scared of what? We're the ones who should be afraid. If her weapons are as powerful as claimed. She's scared of what her people might become, Da-yoon explained. Scared of repeating past mistakes? That fear felt genuine. Real. You can't fake that kind of emotion. Hygiene nodded slowly. I'm inclined to believe them, but belief isn't enough. We need policy. The question before this council is simple. What do we do about humanity? The debate that followed lasted for hours. Council members argued passionately from different perspectives. One chick and several scientists wanted to study humanity's approach, perhaps learn from their methodology. Subin and the economic ministers argued for peaceful isolation, establishing a boundary around human space that both sides would respect. But Taman and the military faction wanted something else entirely. We should strike now, Taman declared, while they're still vulnerable, before they remember too much. The longer we wait, the stronger they become. You saw what happened to Admiral Taesung's fleet, Hyjin reminded him. 70 ships gone in less than a second. How many ships are you willing to sacrifice? As many as necessary? Even gods can be killed if you hit them hard enough. We send everything we have. 2,000 ships. 5,000. 10,000 if needed. We overwhelm them before they can react. Byung-ho felt sick listening to this. War Marshal, you're not understanding the scale of what we're dealing with. Ji-woo described weapons that can erase galaxies. Not planets. Galaxies. If you attack with 10,000 ships, they'll just erase 10,000 ships. Then we'll build more. The Valdran Empire controls 800 star systems. Our industrial capacity is enormous. We can afford losses. Can you afford extinction? Da-yoon asked quietly. Because that's what you're risking. If humans deploy their full defensive network, they wake up those sleeping ships Ji-woo mentioned, there might not be a Valdran Empire left to rebuild. The debate went in circles for another 2 hours. Finally, Hyjin called for a vote. The motion was simple. Establish a formal exclusion zone around human space and forbid any Valdran vessel from entering without explicit High Council approval. Violation would be considered an act of treason. The vote was close. 10 council members in favor, 8 against. The exclusion zone would be established. Tae-min stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is a mistake. History will judge this council as cowards who let a potential threat grow unchecked. He stormed out of the chamber. Hyjin watched him leave with troubled eyes. I hope we made the right choice, she said softly. That night, Da-yoon couldn't sleep. Something about Taemin's reaction bothered her. She'd spent years in intelligence work, reading people, understanding motivations. The war marshal had been too angry, too absolute in his certainty. Men like that didn't accept defeat gracefully. She accessed the military network, using her intelligence credentials to check fleet movements. Everything seemed normal at first. Ships on patrol, routine maintenance schedules, standard operations. But then she noticed something odd. Several supply convoys had been diverted to the same sector over the past week. Ships were gathering at Staging Base Theta 7, a massive military installation near the Empire's core systems. She dug deeper, pulling maintenance records, personnel transfers, ammunition requisitions. The pattern became clear. Taemin was assembling a fleet, a huge fleet, and he'd been doing it quietly for weeks. Probably since Admiral Tae-soon first returned with his report about human weapons. Dagun's blood ran cold. She checked the fleet composition. 2,000 warships. 3,000 support vessels. This wasn't a defensive formation. This was an invasion force. She ran to Byung-ho's quarters and pounded on his door. When he opened it, still half asleep, she pushed past him. Taemin is planning to attack Earth. He's been preparing for weeks. I just found the fleet manifests. Byung-ho was suddenly wide awake. He can't. The council voted for the exclusion zone. He doesn't care about the council vote. He's going to launch an assault before the exclusion zone can be officially implemented. Once he's underway, the council won't be able to stop him without causing a civil war. They rushed to Hyjin's residence, waking her in the middle of the night. She listened to Da-yoon's findings with growing horror. Show me everything, she demanded. Da-yoon pulled up the data on Hyjin's personal terminal. Fleet positions, supply routes, personnel assignments. The evidence was overwhelming. Taemin had been planning this operation for over a month, probably since before Byung-ho and Dae-yoon even went to Sol System. He was never going to accept any decision except war, Hae-jin said bitterly. He saw humans as a threat to be eliminated, and he was preparing to eliminate them regardless of what the council decided. When does he launch? Byung-ho asked. Do-yoon checked the schedules. 2 days. The fleet finishes assembly tomorrow, final preparations the next day. Then they jump to human space. Need to alert the military police. Arrest Taemin for insubordination, Byung-ho suggested. Hae-jin shook her head. He's too powerful. Too many officers are loyal to him. If we try to arrest him, the military might fracture. We could trigger a civil war. She was quiet for a moment, thinking through impossible choices. There's only one thing we can do. We have to warn the humans. It's treason, Dae-yoon said quietly. Giving military intelligence to a potential enemy. Are humans our enemy? Hae-jin asked. They've shown no hostility except in self-defense. They've asked only to be left alone. If we let Taemin attack them, we become the aggressors. We become exactly what we claim to stand against. She pulled up a secure communication channel. Get me a connection to Earth, to Commander Ji-woo specifically. This message needs to go directly to the Watchers. Establishing the connection took an hour. When Ji-woo's face finally appeared on screen, she looked like she'd been expecting the call. Maybe she had been. Jush, Trim Director Hee-jin Ju said. This must be important if you're contacting us personally. Commander, I need to inform you of a situation. One of our war marshals is assembling a fleet to attack your system. 2,000 warships. He launches in 2 days. I cannot stop him without triggering a civil war in my own empire. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Gi-woo's expression didn't change much, but something flickered in her eyes. Sadness. Deep, profound sadness. I appreciate the warning, Prime Director. Though I suspect the Watchers already detected the fleet gathering. They monitor everything within 100 light-years of Earth. Then you know what's coming. Yes, and I know what the Watchers will have to do to stop it. Gi-woo looked directly into the camera. Prime Director, I want you to understand something. When your War Marshal's fleet arrives, some of those ships will be destroyed. Many of them. The Watchers will do what's necessary to defend Earth, but they'll try to minimize casualties. They'll try to scare the fleet into retreating rather than annihilate it completely. And if the fleet doesn't retreat? Gi-woo was quiet for a long moment. Then a lot of people are going to die. And the Watchers will remember a little more of what they used to be. And humanity takes another step closer to becoming what we're trying not to become. She took a breath. Please, if there's any way to stop this, any way at all, do it. For both our sakes. I'll try, Hae-jin promised. But I fear it's too late.
After the transmission ended,
Hae-jin sat in silence. Byung-ho and Dae-yoon waited, unsure what to say. Finally, the Prime Director spoke. I'm going to make a public broadcast. Tonight, I'll reveal Taemin's plan to the entire Empire. I'll explain what we've learned about humans, why attacking them is suicide. Maybe public pressure will force him to stand down. He might arrest you for treason, Dae-yoon warned. Then he arrests me. But I have to try. Because if I don't, if I stay silent and let this happen, I'm complicit in whatever comes next. And I won't live with that. Hae-jin spent the next hour composing her message. When she was ready, she broadcasted on every channel in the Empire. Her face appeared on billions of screens as she explained everything. The truth about humanity's past, the danger of their ancient weapons, the suicidal nature of Taemin's planned attack. She ended with a simple plea. We stand at a crossroads. Do we choose wisdom or destruction? Peace or war? The choice we make now will define the Valdran Empire for generations to come. Choose wisely. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some supported her. Others called her a coward. The Empire erupted into debate, argument, protests on dozens of worlds. But War Marshal Taemin didn't stand down. Instead, he accelerated his timeline. His fleet would launch in 18 hours, before any political opposition could organize effectively. Dae-yoon watched the countdown and felt helpless. In less than a day, Thousands of Valdran soldiers would jump into human space, and what happened next would change everything. War Marshal Taman stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the largest military force the Valdran Empire had ever assembled. 2,000 warships formed a perfect sphere around his command vessel, each one positioned for maximum tactical effectiveness. Every captain had been handpicked for loyalty and courage. Every weapon system had been tested and retested. This was not going to end like Admiral Taesung's humiliating retreat. "All ships report ready, War Marshal," his tactical officer announced. Tae-Min smiled. "Begin hyperspace jump. Target: Sol System, 3rd planet. Formation Delta 7. On my mark." He paused, savoring the moment. Mark. Space twisted and folded as 2,000 ships vanished, crossing light years in an instant. They emerged exactly where planned, surrounding Earth in a massive sphere. The planet hung before them, blue and white and fragile. Billions of lives completely unaware of the massive fleet now holding their world hostage, Taemin's. Sensors immediately detected the 3 human patrol ships that had destroyed Taesung's fleet. They were holding position near the moon, maintaining their usual patrol pattern. 3 tiny vessels against 2,000. The arrogance was almost insulting. "Open communication channel to the planet," Taemin ordered. "All frequencies. I want every human to hear this." The channel opened. Taemin spoke with absolute authority. "Humans of Earth, I am War Marshal Taemin of the Valdran Imperial Navy. Your system is now surrounded by 2,000 warships, each capable of reducing your cities to ash. You have 1 hour to transmit your complete and unconditional surrender. Your defensive vessels will power down their weapons. Your planetary governments will submit to Imperial authority. Failure to comply will result in orbital bombardment. You have 1 hour. Use it wisely." Cut the transmission and settled back in his command chair. This was how annexation was supposed to work. Overwhelming force. Clear ultimatums. Inevitable submission. Within the hour, Earth would be just another conquest in the Empire's history. Incoming transmission from one of the human vessels. "Put it on screen." Commander Giwu appeared. And Taemin immediately understood why Taesung had underestimated these humans. She looked so ordinary. Young, tired, wearing a simple uniform. Nothing about her suggested she commanded weapons that could erase ships from existence. But Taemin knew better. He'd studied all the reports. He'd prepared for her tricks. "War Marshal Taemin," Jiwoo said, and her voice was heavy with exhaustion. "I'm begging you. Please turn your fleet around. You don't understand what you're forcing us to do." "I understand perfectly, Commander. You have 3 ships. I have 2,000. Your psychological warfare worked on Admiral Taesung because he wasn't prepared, but we are prepared. We've analyzed the weapon you used. We know it has limitations. Range, power requirements, reload time. You can't possibly destroy 2,000 ships before we overwhelm you." Giwu closed her eyes. "War Marshal, those 3 ships you see, they're not the only defense Earth has. They're just the patrol vessels. The visible deterrent. Please, don't make me show you what else we have. Threats are pointless, Commander. You have 1 hour. They're not threats." Giwu opened her eyes, and Taemin saw something in them that made his confidence waver. Not fear, not anger, just deep, profound sadness. "They're not threats. They're warnings. Marshal, please. I truly don't want to do this." She made a gesture off-screen. Space itself seemed to shiver. Reality folded, twisted, bent in ways that made Taemin's sensors scream contradictory data. And suddenly, his fleet wasn't alone anymore. Ships appeared. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Vessels beyond anything Taemin had imagined possible. Some were small, barely larger than his flagship. Others were massive, the size of small moons. They materialized throughout the system, surrounding his fleet, above it, below it, everywhere. Each one was dark and smooth, with no visible engines or weapons, but they radiated power that made his instruments overload. Taemin whispered. Gu's voice came through, quiet and sad. This is the ancient human defensive network. These are the Watcher ships. They've been sleeping for 12,000 years. You made us wake them up. Tommen stared at his tactical display in horror. The numbers kept climbing. 300 ships. 500. 800. Each one showing energy signatures that dwarfed anything his fleet possessed. The smallest of them could probably destroy dozens of his warships. The largest ones, the moon-sized behemoths, read as having enough power to sterilize entire star systems. "This is impossible," his science officer said, his voice breaking. "Sir, the energy readings from those vessels, they're beyond our measurement scale. The largest one is generating more power than our entire sun." One of the massive ships, roughly the size of Earth's moon, began to power up a weapon system. Tammen watched his instruments track the energy buildup with mounting terror. The numbers climbed exponentially. 1%. 5%. 10%. At 30% charge, alarms started shrieking throughout his ship. At 50%, several bridge officers evacuated their stations, unable to withstand the readings. At 70%, Tammen realized this single ship, firing this single weapon at full power, could destroy his entire fleet, the planet Earth, and probably everything in the solar system. The weapon continued charging. 80%. 90%, then it stopped. The massive ship held at 90% charge, a demonstration of power so absolute it needed no further explanation. Gu's face reappeared on screen. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last few minutes. "War Marshal, we don't want to kill you. We never did. But you need to understand. These ships have the capability to erase your entire empire. Every planet, every station, every Valdran life across all 800 star systems. We could do it in minutes. Do you understand?" Minutes? Tammen couldn't speak. His throat was closed with fear. "But we won't," Giwu continued. "Because that kind of power, that kind of destruction, that's what we're trying to escape. That's what destroyed us once before. We're giving you a choice, Marshal. Leave now. Tell your empire what you saw, and let us continue developing in peace. In 1,000 years, maybe 2,000, we'll be ready to join the galactic community properly. Not as gods. Not as destroyers. Just as neighbors who've learned from their mistakes." She leaned forward. "Please, please just leave. Don't make us remember any more than we already have. Don't force us to become what we used to be." Timon found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "All ships. Full retreat. Emergency jump. Now, now." The Valdran fleet scattered in complete chaos. Ships collided with each other in their panic to calculate jump coordinates. Several vessels suffered systems failures from trying to engage hyperspace drives too quickly. But within 5 minutes, every single Valdran warship had fled the Sol system as his flagship jumped away. Tammen caught one last glimpse of the ancient human vessels. They were already fading, disappearing back into whatever hidden dimensions they'd emerged from. Returning to sleep, but that moon-sized ship's weapon remained charged at 90% for 3 more seconds. A final reminder of what could have happened. The journey back to Valdran space was silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Every officer on every ship had just witnessed the end of their understanding of the universe. They'd seen power beyond comprehension, and they'd seen it restrained. Mercy from beings who had no reason to show mercy. When Tammen's flagship arrived at the capital world, military police were waiting. Prime Director Hajin had moved quickly, using Tammen's unauthorized attack as justification to remove him from command. He was arrested immediately, charged with treason and endangering the Empire. But the damage, or perhaps the blessing, was already done. Every ship in Tammen's fleet had sensor recordings of the ancient human vessels. Within days, those recordings spread throughout the Empire. People saw the moon-sized ships. They saw the power readings. They saw proof that Commander Jiwoo had been telling the truth about humanity's past. The political implications were enormous. Hyjin used the momentum to push through historic legislation. The Sol exclusion zone became law, with penalties so severe that no Valdran officer would dare violate it. Any ship entering human space without explicit High Council authorization would be considered an act of war against the Empire itself, and its crew would be executed for treason. But Haijin went further. She established a long-range observation program, scientific rather than military. Dr. Bung Ho and Officer Dayun volunteered to lead it, setting up a research station at the edge of the exclusion zone. Their mission was simple: watch humanity develop, document their progress, and wait for the day when they'd be ready for proper contact. 50 years passed. The Valdran Empire grew and changed, but the sole exclusion zone remained absolute. Ships passed within light years of human space, but never entered it. The story of Taemin's fleet became legend, a cautionary tale told to every military recruit about the dangers of arrogance. Dayun, now elderly and honored with the title of director, sat in her observation post watching Earth through instruments that could see across millions of kilometers. Her hair was white, her movements slow, but her eyes were still sharp and curious. On her screens, she watched a human generation ship launch from Earth orbit. It was massive by human standards, carrying 10,000 colonists toward Alpha Centauri. The ship used fusion drives that would take 50 years to reach their destination. Primitive technology compared to Valdran hyperspace drives. But it was theirs. Earned through their own research, built with their own hands, powered by their own understanding of physics. A young Valdran officer, fresh from the academy, approached her station. His name was Jae-sung, and this was his first assignment. Director Dayun, I've been watching the humans for 3 months now, and I don't understand. Why do we still observe them? They're just a developing species. They'll be centuries behind us technologically. Dayun smiled, the expression of someone who'd learned patience over decades. Come here, look at this. She pulled up historical records on her screen. Images of human progress over the past 50 years. When we first found them, they'd barely reached their own moon. Now they're building colony ships. They're doing it slowly, carefully, learning from each mistake. No shortcuts. No borrowed technology. Everything earned through effort and understanding. She changed the display to show the ancient human ships that had appeared 50 years ago. These vessels, the ones that frightened War Marshal Taemin's fleet, they're still there, hidden, sleeping. The Watchers are still watching. But they don't help modern humans. They let them struggle. Let them learn. Let them grow. But why? Jae-sung asked. If I had access to technology like that, I'd use it immediately. That's exactly why they don't share it. Power without wisdom is dangerous, officer. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. They achieved technological godhood, and it destroyed them. Now they're learning to be wise first, powerful second. Doyun pulled up another display showing Valdran development over the past 3,000 years. Look at our own history. We conquered 800 star systems. We spread through force and intimidation. We assumed power meant we were superior. But then we met a species with real power, and they showed us restraint. They could have destroyed us, but chose mercy instead. What does that teach us? Jae-sung was quiet, thinking that maybe we've been developing the wrong way. Perhaps. Or perhaps every species needs to find their own path. But we can learn from watching humans. They're teaching the galaxy something important. That strength isn't about having the biggest weapons. It's about knowing when not to use them. She turned back to her screens, watching the generation ship accelerate toward the stars. In another 1,000 years, maybe 2,000, humans will naturally develop technology approaching what the Watchers possess. At that point, when they've earned that power through wisdom and understanding, the Watchers will reveal themselves. They'll return the old histories, the ancient knowledge, and humanity will have a choice about what to do with it. Do you think they'll choose wisely? Jae-sung asked. I believe so. Because if they do, if humanity manages to reclaim their heritage without repeating their mistakes, they'll be the most remarkable species in the galaxy. Not because of their power, but because of what they chose to do with it.
Oh.
On Earth, billions of humans went about their lives, most still unaware of the ancient secrets hidden in their own solar system. They built cities, raised families, dreamed of distant stars. They were a young civilization by galactic standards, just beginning to explore beyond their home world. But in hidden facilities scattered throughout the system, the Watchers remained vigilant. They monitored the skies for threats. They maintained the ancient vessels in case humanity needed defense. And they waited patiently for the day when their vigil could finally end. When modern humanity would be ready to learn the truth about their past. Commander Ji Woo, now promoted to admiral and showing gray in her hair, stood in a park near her home. Children played on the grass, laughing and chasing each other without a care in the world. Overhead, the Generation ship was visible as a bright point of light. Beginning its long journey to Alpha Centauri, a young girl ran up to her, eyes wide with excitement. Admiral Juwu, did you see the colony ship? My teacher says someday humans will travel to lots of stars. Is that true? Ku knelt down to the girl's level, smiling. Yes, that's true. Someday humanity will reach many stars. It'll take time and hard work and learning from mistakes. But we'll get there. Will it be dangerous? Sometimes space is big and mysterious, but that's what makes it worth exploring. And by the time your generation grows up, we'll be even better at it. The girl grinned and ran back to her friends. Gi Woo watched her go, thinking about all the secrets she carried. The truth about humanity's past, the ancient weapons sleeping throughout the system, the choice that had been made 12,000 years ago to start over, to learn wisdom alongside power. Maybe in 1,000 years, that little girl's descendants would be ready to learn the truth. Ready to reclaim humanity's heritage without repeating humanity's mistakes. Ready to join the galactic community, not as gods or conquerors, but as wise neighbors who'd learned the hardest lesson any civilization could learn, that power without wisdom led to destruction. But wisdom with power could build something beautiful, something lasting, something worth waiting 12,000 years to achieve. Q looked up at the stars, whispered a promise to the ancient humans who'd made this all possible. We won't waste your sacrifice. We'll do it right this time. We'll learn what you couldn't. When we finally reach the stars as equals, we'll make you proud. In the distance, the Generation ship continued its journey, carrying humanity's hopes toward distant worlds, slow, primitive, but theirs. And that made all the difference.